Right then, an inexplainable fear and horror started to creep up into Luginian's heart, drowning him. If anything were to really happen to her and his crew, he would never forgive himself. It was like there was something stuck in Luginian's throat, painful and swollen. With both arms, he reached over to hold Tian Hao's arm with the band-aid where she had her IV. The image of when he charged into Producer Sun's room flashed across his mind again. The memory of Producer Sun pressed up against her. His own stiff, emotionless expression. Suddenly, it felt like someone had stabbed him in the heart, then forcibly sliced across. He felt the pain of blood pouring out of him. He couldn't help but grip onto her hand even harder, as though he was upset about something. Then, he lowered his head, and gently kissed her slim fingers. At 2 in the morning, the assistant who stood outside guarding the hospital room finally couldn't take it anymore. He went downstairs to sleep in the car. Just as he was in deep sleep, he suddenly heard a knock at the car window. As he woke up all groggy from sleep, he was still in a confused daze, as rolled down the windows to see Luginian standing outside, carrying Tian Hao, who was in deep sleep. The assistant woke up sprightly and hurriedly got out of the car. He opened the passenger door and waited for Luginian, who carried Tian Hao, to sit in. He got back into the car, yawned a few times consecutively, before asking, "Mr. Lu, are we going to the set or back to Myeongsu Garden?" Luginian, who hadn't shut his eyes all night, had shadows under his eyes. His face was pale, but it didn't affect his handsome good looks in the slightest. He lowered his eyes to look at the woman in his arms, who moved to a more comfortable position. Then he looked up and said in a low voice, "Myeongsu Garden." The assistant read the vibe and didn't say a word. He only started up the car and headed towards Myeongsu Garden. When the car reached Myeongsu Garden, Madam Chen had just gotten up. She heard the sound of the car and immediately ran out of the mansion to find Luginian carrying Tian Hao. She was dazed for a while before asking, "What's wrong with Mrs.?" Luginian didn't say a word, carrying Tian Hao into the mansion and upstairs. He placed her onto the big and soft bed. He took the duvet and carefully covered her with it, then gently tiptoed out of his bedroom. On his way out, he closed the door and turned to Madam Chen by the entrance. He said in a flat tone, "Don't make congee for breakfast too oily." Madam Chen nodded and said, "Yes." Luginian strode away. Just as he reached the stairs, he suddenly stopped walking. "Don't disturb the Mrs. Rest. Remember to leave the congee warm, so when the Mrs. wakes, it won't be cold." "Yes." Luginian thought for a moment more and added, "Look after the Mrs. well. I have business to attend to. I'll be off." "Understood, Mr. Lu." Luginian didn't say a word more, standing on the spot for a while before walking downstairs. Not long after, the sound of a car starting up and leaving came from outside the house. Tian Hao had a dream. The dream was beautiful. Her father and mother were in it. Though they had left her so many years ago, she still remembered their young, smiling faces. She also remembered their courtyard and the 2 pomegranate trees. Every autumn, there would be bright red fruits, each one like beautiful lanterns. In her dream, she saw a young, fair-skinned boy in a school uniform. As the dream changed, the young man turned into the modern-clothed, cold yet charming Luginian.